Sonya, like we was talking about before the show, let's get right into it, man. So the family of a teen, 19-year-old brother, the family of a teen whose naked body was discovered in Livingston, Montana, in a field off Highway 89 at the beginning of February, says law enforcement is not working hard to uncover the truth about the death of their loved one. This young brother name was Jalen Williams, who was a native of Evanston, Illinois. He was found dead on February 10th near his girlfriend's house. Authorities say he froze to death. However, the 19-year-old's family suspects foul play. Now, he moved to Montana for like a job or something like that. He had a girlfriend, these type of things. Sonia, I also read another report that mentioned how the brother may have had some mental issues where people seen him walking naked on the highway. So I don't know if it was foul play for sure in this incident, but this is a young brother's life loss, Sonia. So when you seen this story and the breakdown of how everything took place, what were you thinking?
One of the things that I just first, before going into all that, when I read the story, I was like, it's a shame. You know how we have to have the talk with our babies to prepare them for this life when it being a Black person and encounters potentially with law enforcement. We also have to be aware that people in community are not going to treat us equal. So it's not just law enforcement, right? It's any community. And so I just like to, give that verbal warning to folks. All communities ain't equal in the sense of you can't just up and move to a state that has less than X percent, let's just say less than 5% Black folks. And some and Wisconsin, I would definitely say is probably less than 1%. White Black folks. And so that's the first thing that ran into my mind was like, why the hell did he decide that this is the place, moving to Montana, that he ended up there and then ended up in this situation. So that was the first thing. But secondarily, of course, people, if they don't know something and they don't know you and they're not familiar with you, and especially if you're not that token Negro that they can vouch for, all kind of narratives can spring up as to the what, the why, the who, and the when, right? And so now you have a young 19-year-old, and I can't imagine his family and what they're going through, knowing that, at 19, that naked and froze to death. Like
naked and froze to death. Yep, hypothermia is what they said happened, and it's difficult for me at times because the family is screaming foul play, right? There are reports that show the brother was walking naked. Family is saying, well, hey, he had scrapes on his body. It looks like some type of trauma. Now, let's keep it real. If you naked and you walking and falling around, that can produce some of that trauma. But here's the issue, white folks. We are very untrusting of your neighborhoods and your state of mind.
Right.
See? So it's always going to be easy for somebody in our community to say, wait a minute. Yeah, my son was doing whatever, or he had problems or whatever, but we don't trust people, man. And this is, so I'm always going to give Black families grace. Even if there was no foul play in this situation, we are suspecting foul play because there always is, man. If there's a neighborhood or a community where it's all white, Montana, I think it's like 90-something%. The town he was in is 8,000 people, 90-something% white. You guys do shit to us and cover it up.
Yes.
So yeah, maybe sometime we come out and say, well, hey, this happened and it didn't possibly, but we don't trust y'all. You know what I mean?
Right. It reminds me of a case several years ago. Young Black boy. He had befriended some people on social media. He was going to community college out in Roseville and had driven his car to the friend's house. Come to find out, he meets the girl and everything. And she says that, I'm not a racist, but my dad is. And you can't come around when my dad is around. And he's an ex-cop and all this stuff. And the way they spun this story was just so crazy. Like the things that they were saying about this kid was unbelievable. Had never been in trouble with the law, had never been suspended from school, was doing very well. Did he have some mental challenges? Yes, like documented. but he was never like violent and off the Richter scale of doing things to harm self or to harm others. He was just one of those very reserved people who didn't get social clues. So he may have been a little
Mm.
autistic.
Mhm.
And his interactions with people spoke to him not being socially aware of how to interact with people.
Mhm.
With all that being said, he didn't deserve to be in his vehicle, no weapon, and shot through the window and killed by 3 police officers.
Hmm.
And so, I can remember going out, getting a team together, and particularly using white allies or non-Black allies to do some canvassing of the neighborhood and asking them questions. What did you see and hear on this day?
Hmm.
Had you ever seen this kid in the neighborhood? And because this cop and this family lived where they lived and was an influence in the community, they were able to get to the community where nobody ever came forward and said anything until years later. Now we're talking, this was probably about 5 years ago. And
Hmm.
we go out and do a candlelight vigil every year in that neighborhood right in front of the house.
Hmm.
And they hate to see us coming.
I
And
bet.
I mean, it's Trumpville, and sometimes they show up with the big flags and
Mhm.
all the hate and vitriol that you can think of. But that's the triggering of reading this story about this young man. That's what came to mind for me, because there was social media proof that he and the daughter in that house had some kind of relationship. At what level, we didn't, it wasn't like they were boyfriend and girlfriend, but they had been communicating, and he
Mhm.
had been to her house before.
Mhm.
So that leads me to, like, a skeptic Black person, like, why was he there?
Yeah,
and, and
and
what was
it's
that
it's
interaction like?
and sometimes, like, we see a lot of incidents where our brothers, people in general who are dealing with mental illness, right? And cops show up,
Yes,
authority figures show up.
yes.
They're not equipped to deal with people who are dealing with this with these type of ailments, so they may confuse it for like a violent threat when that may not be the case at all. So everybody tuning into the show, we talking about a young brother named Jalen Williams, who was found dead in Montana. He's from Illinois. He went to Montana to work and kind of better his life, as his family is saying. The brother was found dead and naked, face down, right? And his family has questions. So we always have to be cognizant of that point. Like your mama know you.
Right, right.
You see
And
what
I
I'm
think,
saying?
yeah, absolutely. And I think that if we as a community who is concerned about humanity, I think that we can intelligently construct some policies and practices that in any case, that there's a protocol, there's a XYZ that we got to get to, right? Let's do ABC, let's do 1 2 3, let's get to XYZ, right?
Mhm,
And then
mhm,
be transparent with that information to give over to family members in a timely manner, instead of
mhm.
stringing folks along so that they can be
Yep.
more emotionally hurt by the lack of answers. And
Mhm,
so I think when we get to that place, when we're talking about police investigations, when we're talking about our loved ones being harmed in community or not, if this was the case, we don't know, we won't know for a while, probably, because it's not going to be a priority in
yep,
a place like this where there are very little of us.
yep.
um and so that's the unfortunate part about it as well. So I'm always thinking outside of the box, in the sense of, how can we help a family who is not from this area feel a little bit more satisfaction about how we're investigating this case. And
Mhm,
so I'm saying that if we have some kind of national effort, that this is the protocol when dealing with and investigating cases like
mm.
this might take away some of that fear, some of that disbelief and lack of trust that Black folks have in community when it comes to white folks investigating what happened to us,
Yeah,
because we
that
know that there's a history, and the
yep,
history can't be erased. So now that we
yep.
know that there's a history that cannot be erased, we have to address it by being more proactive and upfront and transparent and
Mhm.
accountable to the very people who have been harmed the most in this country.
Yep, and they're not transparent enough because the uncle was
Yeah,
coming out and saying, like, "Hey, yeah, we seen his body and we think there's some foul play, but the detectives ain't really talking to us.
right.
The detectives is